The beast has returned. Dynamic programming strikes once again. Hello everybody, I'm Kara, and today we are talking about everybody's favorite programming strategy, dynamic programming. That's right, because it's dynamic, that's why you guys like it so much. Just kidding, you probably hate it by now. But anyways, I'm here to make it more fun for you guys by giving you even more examples. I already did a video on dynamic programming, but I went over a lot of the more basic examples, so today we are going to go over the big boy advanced topics in dynamic programming. And honestly, I think that the best way to learn dynamic programming is to look at the examples, because then you could get more practice, you can figure out what to look for when you're doing dynamic programming problems. So let us get into it. So just as a recap, I like to think of dynamic programming as recursion, except you could use anything that you previously looked at. Like in normal recursion, you're limited to just using the stuff that you passed into your arguments, but here you could use anything that you've looked at before. So if you've heard about dynamic programming before, you've probably been given the coin change problem as an example. And if you remember from my greedy programming video, it's like if you have your boy Bob and you have your boy yourself and you want to give Bob some X dollars, or let's make it N to be USACO friendly, you know what I'm saying? Actually, you know what? X is more USACO friendly, I'm trolling. And then you got N coins of like different denominations, let's say 1, 15, and 20. And basically there's two problems we could talk about here, in fact. Like, this is not just one problem. We could either talk about how many ways there are to give him the change, or which is the best way to give him the change, like which one gives you the least number of coins. So let's just talk about the problem where we had to decide what's the best way to give Bob the X dollars. So in my greedy algorithms tutorial, you probably remember that I said that you could use the greedy for this, but that's only in specific scenarios, right? Because in this particular case, let's say we want to give Bob like $31, then if we give the 20 first, then we have 11 left over, which means we can't give this. So we have to give 11 which is super inefficient. That's 12 coins in total. What the heck? It would be better instead to give 2 of these and 1 of these, and then you get only 3 coins. So clearly, greedy doesn't work here. Where greedy does work is if all the coins are multiples of each other, like if it's like 1, 5, 20. Then in this case, if you give 4 or 5 coins, that's exactly the same as giving like 120, so you might as well always give a 20. A 20 is just a better all-around decision. You can't go wrong with a 20. But if we go back to 15, we gotta think a little bit more. So when you approach a problem, a good way to figure out that it's a DP is if, like, greedy doesn't work, first off, and second off, you could find a way of reducing the problem after taking action. I know that's really unspecific, but, like, if you look through these examples, you see what I mean. So for example, in this example, right, if I give, like, a 1 to Bob, then now I only owe him $30 more. So if I find the best way to give Bob $30, then I can easily find the best way to give him $31, right? Because then I just put the 1 back in, and then we got $31. Or let's say that we gave Bob $15, so we originally had 31, but we gave him $15, then we only have to give him 16 more. So if we find the optimal way to give him $16, then we can add in the 15 and we'll get back to 31. One that we give him $20, then we have to give him $11 more, and if we find the optimal way to give him $11, then we can just add back in the 20 and we get the optimal for if we gave him 20 first. And then we found optimal solutions for each one, and then we can just take the minimum number of coins for all these three. So you saw that, like, in this problem we were able to reduce the problem to a smaller number, and then you could probably see that we could keep reducing that number until we get to a base case, and then we could build it back up. So it's recursion. But if you think about it more, straightforward recursion doesn't work. So what do you think? That's right, you think dynamic programming. So once you realize that a problem is dynamic programming, you gotta figure out how you're going to recurse. So when you recurse, you could basically look at the different things that you could possibly recurse on, right? We could possibly recurse on the amount of money left to give. We could recurse on, like, the coins, or we could recurse on, like, how many coins we already gave out, right? Those are the 3 things that we are keeping track of here. So if you have 3 things to keep track of, you gotta have 3 slots to put them in. So you can only have 1 thing stored in each array slot, and then you gotta have 2 more things to store the other 2. So just by looking at the variables that we have, we could determine, like, how our DP array is gonna look. Now, of course, it doesn't always work, but it's a really good rule of thumb. If you could determine 3 variables that you have to keep track of, then you could probably figure this out. So we've got a 2-dimensional DP. Wow, this is getting complicated. And basically, we gotta figure out what we want to recurse on. So essentially, we want to solve for the number, right? So usually, the thing that you want to solve for is gonna go in the thing that's stored in the array. So we'll set this to be equal to the minimum number of coins. Then what should we set these to? They're just gonna be the remaining variables, right? So this is gonna be amount of money to give, and then this is going to correspond to which coin we're giving, because we want to build up our thing, right? We want to give a 1, then we want to give 15, then we want to give 20, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter, but yeah, we want to build 1 by 1 by 1. Okay, so now that we have this idea, how do we recurse? So I'll set this to ij, and we got to solve for this. So when we're trying to think of the recursion, the way I like to do it is just to think about, like, what the heck does dp00 mean? it means that we have $0 to give and we're on coin 1. Basically what this means then is that we want to give $0 with only the coin here, which is a $1 coin, let's say. Well, let's not say a cent coin. And that's right, you need 0 coins to do it. That's the minimum number, so we're good. Then what about DP10, let's say? So we're only going to use, so we have 1, 15, 20. We're only going to use the 0th coin, and we want to give $1, or 1 cent. So the only way to do that, you have to have a minimum of 1 coin. And then you just keep going up. Then you go 2, there's like, you need a minimum of 2 coins if you just use 1, blah, blah, right? Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. So then what about DP of 0 of 1, let's say? So that means that we've already given out the 1s, so now we can either use 1 or 15 now. So this is still 0, that makes sense. Then we go to DP10, or 1, 1, and we know that this is still 1 because you can't go to 15. But what happens once we get to 15? Just using logic, right? We know that we could either give 15 1s or we could give 1 15. So that means that originally our DP 15 0, which means only using 1s with 15 coins, but now we could give it in 1 coin. So we know that this should be 1, but how did we get that? Well, basically we know that we could give $15, right? And let's say we have $15 left to give, and we give $15, then we have 0 left to give, and we know there's 0 ways you only need 0 coins to do that, so you're going to have your 15 plus zeros, so that's going to be 1. However, this gets a lot more complicated when we talk about DP16, 16, 1, because now we can give a 15-cent coin, but there's going to be 1 cent left over. So let's say we do give it 15 cents, right? We get 16 minus 15 gives us 1 cent left to give. And now we could give this 1 cent with either 1s or 15, right? Because we're allowed to take either 1s or 15. Because this 1 symbolizes that we could use the 0th or the first coin, so 1 or 15. And then this means that we have $1 left to give. But then we have to add 1, right? Because this is the minimum number of coins to give the 1, but we already spent 1 coin to give 15. But what we can also do is give all of the $16 using only the coins before it, right? So we could also potentially give all 16 using the coins before it. And then our optimal solution is just the minimum of these two. Wait a minute, I think we see a recursion here. Hold up. Let us try to genericize it. Generify? I don't know how to say it. Genericize it. How about that? Okay, so basically we have dpij 16.1, and then we go to dpi minus AJ. Because like, let's say that AJ is the denomination of our jth coin, right? Which is 15. And then it's the same thing, so J. But then we had to min that with DP of I, because we don't give this coin. And then we only want to use previous coins. So that's just going to be J minus 1. So we take the min of this, and hooray, we got a recursion. So literally, all we got to do is carry out this recursion, and we're done. So why don't we just go to our final answer, right? At the very end, what we want to do is we want to use any of the 3 coins, right? We're fine with any of the 3 coins, and we want to give $31, right? So we got, this is 31.2 is our answer, right? So this is going to be equal to the min of dp I minus aj, and aj is 20, so it should be dp 11, using only the previous coins, plus 1, because we gave that 10, and then dp of I, which is 31, and using only the previous coins. Oh, sorry, that should be 2. So, clearly, to give 11, using any of the coins, we have to give only 1s. So, this right here, DP11 2, is literally going to be, like, what is it, 11, right? So, this whole part is going to be 12, but then this part is way better, right? Because using only a 1 and a 15, we can give 31 using only 3 coins. So, this is going to be 3, it'll give a minimum of 3 and 12, and we get our answer is 3, hooray! Let us go, we did it, boys. And why do we want to modify this really quickly to figure out how many ways there are to give him the coin, right? Then, we could either give him this current coin, or we could not give him this current coin, right? Just the same logic. But instead of taking the min of the 2, we have to sum the 2, because we want to find as many possibilities as we can. So literally, if we wanted to find, like, how many ways there are to do it, if dpij represents the number of ways to give the coins, then dpij is just equal to this plus this. Whoops, sorry, there should be a plus 1 here. We just add the 2 instead of taking the min, and we got the number of ways to do it. Very cool stuff. So why don't we just code this up real quick, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I wrote up the code real quick. It's not super complicated, but let me just walk you through it. So basically, you're reading the stuff. Then what we do is we want to set everything to one, like, really big number. Because basically, when we looked at it previously, we had a 1, right? And that means that we could get any possible dollar amount there is out there, right? But what happens if we had only 5 and 20? Then we can't get 21, for example. So basically, if you have a really big number, it's as if it's impossible, right? Because if it's a really big number in a min statement, it doesn't have any effect. And then basically what this here is the base case, right? Because basically your base case is when you have something and then a 0, right? Because that means you could only use the first coin, and that's really easy, right? Because in any recursion, you need a base case, and if this is really easy, we could just do it. Like for this case, right? If we have $1 to give, we only have to give 1 of the 0th coin, then 2 is 2. And let's say our 0th coin was 5, for example. Then 0 would be 0, because you had to give 0 5. But if you have 1, that's impossible, so that would be a really big number. But then if you had DP50, and you wanted to give $5 with only a $5 coin, you would have to give 1. So right here, you're basically saying, if it's divisible, that means it's possible to give it, then we set the number of coins to the amount you had to give divided by the amount the first coin has. Okay, so now we have our base case, and now we can just set up our recursion straightforward. We just copy that equation we had right here. We just copied this. So, of course, if your index is like negative, you don't want to put that in, so we have to have this case over here, but if otherwise, you get to use exactly the same formula that we have. And then at the very end, you just print out your answer, right? You want to give X dollars with all of the coins. Epic! So let's just show you how it works. So let's say you have 331 and you have 1, 15, 20, we get 3 as expected. What happens if we wanted to give 34 and with 3 coins? So we could give 1, 15, or 20. And we get 6, right? Because you had to give 2 15s and then 4 1s. What if we have like 3, 35, 1, 15, 20? And it's only 2 because we only had to give a 15 and 20. Dang, that's cool. And what happens if we had 5 and 20 and we wanted to give 21? It gives you that really big number because it's impossible. Epic! And just to show you how cool dynamic programming is, we could just change this to a plus, take this out, and redefine our base case, and we got the number of ways there are to do it. So there's only one way to do it if your coin is divisible. If it's not divisible, you have 0 ways to do it because it's impossible. So we're just going to set that to 1, and then everything else got to be set to 0. Oh, this doesn't take this out. Okay. You don't need the plus 1, right? Because you're basically saying either you don't give this one or you do give this one, and it's the sum of those two probabilities. And let us do a simple example. We could just do, what's a really simple example? Let's say we have 2 coins and we want to give 10, and we could either give 5s or 1s. There's 3 ways, right? We could either give 1 5 and 5 1s, we could give all 1s, or we could give 2 5s. Very epic stuff. We literally only had to change like 2 lines of code and we're good. Alright, this nonsense is the coin chain problem, and honestly just looking at these examples is super helpful, so let's do one more just to ingrain what I taught you about how to approach DP problems into your head, and then we're Gucci. Alright, now let's talk about the knapsack problem, and this is another one that's really common. And basically it says you have n objects, and each one has a size, let's say S, and it has a value, V. And let's say that you have a knapsack that has like capacity C. So you got your knapsack and you have a bunch of objects you want to put in it, and some of them are more valuable than others and they take up different amounts of space. So essentially what you want to do is you want to fill up your knapsack with as many valuable items as you can and get the maximum profit you can. So why don't we just say that you have 3 objects and you got a capacity of 10. So let's say your objects are one that takes up space 3 and gives you $9, 7, $20, and then 9 and let's say $28. Now, at first glance, we could probably just see that this is the solution, right? You get 29, and you take up the full space. But the problem is, you can't do this greedily. You might think you want to take the one that gives you the most amount of money for the least amount of space, but in this case, that would be this one right here, because it gives you 28, which is more than 3 times 9. The rest of them give 3 or less times its space. But we don't even include 9 in it, so that's not even fair. It doesn't even work. So how are we going to do this? That's right. If this doesn't work, it gotta be DP, right? Right? So essentially, now we got to think about what possible things can we put in our DP. So just like the coin chain problem, we got to keep track of which one we're on. So that's one variable. And then we also got to keep track of how much space we have left. So that's the second variable. And then third, we got to keep track of like how much money we're getting. So we got 3 variables again, and guess how that turns out? DP with 2 slots and then another slot for the storage place. And we want to store our answer, so our answer is going to be the amount of money we get, the max amount in this case. And then our 2 variables we had to keep track of are the number we're on and the amount of space we have left. So for this one, the recursion is a lot more straightforward because basically we could think about it this way, right? We could either give one of the objects or we could not give one of the objects. So how much money do we make if we take this particular object? Then we're going to have to take from the previous I minus 1 objects, and how much space are we going to have left? That's right, we're going to have j minus, like, let's say, like, what is it, SI, because that's the size, and that's how much space it takes up. And then we had to add in the profit we get for this particular one, which is going to be PI, let's say, or VI is what we said before. But we can also not give this object, in which case it's just going to be the max of the previous one, and the same capacity. And we take the max of this. So hooray, we got our recursion, and now it's just a matter of coding it up. Alright, Epic, here's the code. You basically read in everything here, and we do our base case again, same thing. So whenever you use only your first item, for any capacity remaining that's bigger than your first item, you're allowed to put your first item in which case you get the value of that first item. If I is smaller than the size of that first item, you can't put it in, so you can't get the value for it, so it'll just stay 0. Okay, so we finished our base case, and then we just go through each one, and we literally apply the exact same recursion that we talked about earlier. And then we print out our answer. So if we do an example, let us put in our test case. Hooray, we get 29. Very cool stuff. Alright, I hope that was helpful. Those were 2 pretty important DP problems, and instead of just focusing on one-dimensional, we got to 2-dimensional. Oh my god, we are so cool. But honestly, I feel like the best way to figure out dynamic programming problems is to just look up examples of it, right? So just search up dynamic programming applications. There's a ton of them. If I could just name a few for you guys, if you want to search them up, you guys could search up balanced binary trees, time sharing on CPUs. I saw that one recently. Bellman-Ford. Floyd-Warshall is technically DP as well, so if you guys want to learn that, sure. The only problem with Floyd-Warshall is literally n cubed. Like, what the heck is the point of an n cubed shortest path algorithm? I don't get it. But anyways, thank you guys for watching so much. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more. I hope it was helpful. Once again, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time.